Retirement is more than a destination. It's a journey that starts with a dream. A vision for the way you want to live, recharge, and give back. To get there, you need a plan to make your retirement dreams come true. Now in its second season, the Wheelhouse Retirement Show provides you with the essential strategies needed to plan your ideal retirement. From income planning and wealth management to strategies for taxes, long-term care, and leaving a legacy, Rishi Ghosh, Anthony Stryker, and the team at Wheelhouse Advisory Group provide modern solutions and comprehensive plans for your journey to and through retirement. This is the Wheelhouse Retirement Show.
Welcome to a special episode of the Wheelhouse Retirement Show. I'm Rishi Ghosh, and joining me is Marty Ruby. Marty is an actuary, the founder and chairman of Stonewood Financial, and the author of the No Compromise Retirement Plan, the New Rules of Retirement Saving, and the New Holistic Retirement. Marty, welcome.
Great to be back. Rishi, thank you very much for having me.
I brought a copy of your second book here, actually my favorite out of your trio, called the No Compromise Retirement Plan. Tell me a little bit about this book.
Well, I wrote that in recognition that when I was in my 60s, I was in the spot of maybe most of your viewers today. And that is, we have saved tax deferred, saved in 401k plans and IRAs. We put our money in, we got our tax deduction while we were saving. But now, when it comes time to retire and take out money, we're going to be taxed on both everything we put in and all the growth. That's called tax deferred savings. And what my point of the book was that because of how we saved, we are forced to make certain compromises. Some which might be obvious, other ones, particularly tax compromises, aren't so obvious. And so a lot of the book does focus on the tax implications of how you saved and what you could do about it.
I know you and I are very, very big proponents of tax planning, but not just filing taxes, but actually true strategic tax planning. And I've talked for many years on IRA to Roth IRA conversions and how that could be potentially advantageous for so many families and so many of our viewers. But I know you actually have a different strategy in addition to Roth IRAs that you've worked very well for some of your families.
Absolutely. One of the things you have to realize is that you cannot ignore the tax code when you're saving for retirement, because it can cost you or save you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. So again, people usually are in these tax deferred plans, they're saving, and now they got a point where they owe a lot of taxes. They just don't realize it yet because of how they saved. So one solution has always been a Roth conversion. You take your money, you take it out of your IRA, you roll it to a Roth, pay the tax you already owe while you can today when your account's smaller and your tax rates are lower, so that you're saving some taxes there, and then let it grow tax-free in a Roth. However, a Roth is not the only tax-free savings instrument.
Oh, yeah?
There is another one, and there you can go to a different part of the code. Now, I'm an actuary, so I hope you appreciate I'll get a little geeky on you, but nothing says you have to save under the section of the code that IRAs and 401ks are under. That's a section 400 of the code. I looked at section 7702.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, 7702 covers life insurance.
Okay.
Now, as I've mentioned before, this is something, when I first say those two words, everybody's saying, they're scratching their head. I'm too old, it's too expensive, I don't want to pay all the premium, my kids get all the death benefit. Why am I mentioning life insurance? Well, I'm not mentioning just any life insurance. This is something called indexed universal life. It is a product designed not only to accumulate tax-free, not only to pay a tax-free benefit to your heirs, but to pay out significant tax-free payments to you and your spouse while you're living. So in that way, it's more of an allocation of your existing assets as opposed to something you're kind of buying on the side.
So as opposed to thinking about this as not necessarily just a product, I'm just buying a product for maybe death benefit like so many life insurance policies are, it's really more of a strategy, taking some of that tax deferred money and making it a tax-free status?
Right. It's no different when you think about conceptually than a Roth conversion. You want to get your tax out of the way, but rather than rolling your money into a Roth, you instead roll it into indexed universal life. But from then on, everything is growing tax-free. But unlike a Roth, there's certain benefits that having IUL as part of your overall retirement strategy can bring you. So for example, there is a legacy value. Life insurance is the only asset that is worth more the day you die than the day before.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's one. Second one, which we can discuss later, is called the power of indexing. It's how interest is credited to your account. And unlike a Roth, which might be in stocks and bonds and go up or down, in Index Universal Life, the account doesn't go down. It can only go up or stay level. Third is it provides a very stable base for income. Because it's at a nice steady growth, you don't have the fluctuations or volatility you might in a managed plan. Fourth is, as I mentioned, totally tax-free. And finally, it also provides some additional benefits for long-term care. So when I kind of advise my clients to think about allocating a portion of their retirement savings into Index Universal Life, it's really to gain all of these benefits. It's not just one or the other. It's a package of benefits that no other product or strategy out there can provide.
So we're talking about safety from potential market losses. We're
Right.
talking about moving money from tax deferred to tax free status.
Right.
Potential legacy options there as well as the option for tax free income at some point in the future.
Exactly.
So it's, as you said, it's not necessarily a product, but it's more of a strategy in the overall situation, an overall investment portfolio. Is there generally a rule of thumb, or how does somebody go about deciding if this is a good strategy for them?
Right. Well, part of it is, of course, they should talk to their financial advisor, people like you. We have developed a number of reports and analysis that you have access to that you could run for them that kind of quantifies what is produced under various strategies. Keep your money in your IRA, do a Roth conversion, convert some of that money to IUL in terms of the income you could produce, in terms of the death benefit or legacy value you can produce, and so forth. So it's a question of looking across the spectrum of options and figuring out what collection of those are best for me. Now, this is a diversification strategy. We don't recommend that you put all your money in any one strategy. You want to kind of spread it out, but certainly, at least for our clients, we tell them you might consider perhaps up to a third of your retirement savings to go into this tax-free IUL strategy.
This is actually my favorite book out of Marty's multitude of books. So to receive a free copy of Marty's book, contact our office. Looking for some help with this strategy or looking to address the tax risks you have in retirement? We'll talk about the power of indexing coming up on the Wheelhouse Retirement Show. Stick with us.
Just when you may want to forget your age, Uncle Sam says not so fast. Knowing your age is more important than ever when it comes to taking your required minimum distributions, or RMDs. Legislation just changed the age requirement, and not accounting for that could impact your retirement plan. It could be key to not overpaying on taxes in retirement. So remember, when it comes to RMDs, age is more than just a number. Before your next birthday, call today to secure a strategy for the RMD age change and your retirement.
You may be surprised to learn that your taxes could go up in retirement. That's right, you could be paying even more taxes in retirement. With the threat of possible tax hikes looming, your retirement lifestyle could be in jeopardy unless you take action. Now's the time to take advantage of proactive tax planning strategies to keep even more of your hard-earned dollars and give less to Uncle Sam. Find out by scheduling your complimentary 30-minute strategic planning call now. You've worked too hard to overpay taxes in retirement. Schedule your complimentary call today. I'm Rishi Ghosh, and I'm happy to be here today with our special guest, Marty Ruby. Marty is a financial author and actuary, and he is helping us analyze Index Universal Life, or IULs, as a retirement asset today. Marty, I know in the last segment we talked about IUL as a portion of your overall portfolio, but you mentioned it has a lot of different potential benefits for someone. And one of those benefits is indexing. Can you tell me a little bit about, as I call it, the power of indexing?
Right. Well, indexing refers to how, that's kind of the indexing part of Index Universal Life. It refers to how interest is credited to your policy.
Okay.
So indexing is a very interesting concept because generally it's linked to an index such as the S&P 500. Now, people familiar with that, the S&P 500 is the index of the 500 largest stocks in the U.S. And of course, it can go up and down. It is all kind of volatility. The way indexing works is every year you look at the change in the market as measured by the S&P 500. If the market goes up that year, you're credited with a portion of that increase. So let's say the market goes up 10%. You might get 10% of that. If it goes up 15, it might get capped at 12%. that amount is locked into your account. If the market drops that year, you are guaranteed to do no worse than zero. In other words, in a good year you go up, in a bad year you stay level. And it's what I think of as kind of a ratchet return. You go up or stay level, you never give it back. Now here's the amazing thing about this. Over a period of time, we were getting this nice steady growth as opposed to the volatility of the stock market. Historically though, you've gotten a very good return. So let me give you a couple statistics. Between 2000 and 2021, it's a 22-year period, we went through a very flat market, bear market in the early, first decade of that period, where we had the dot-com bubble burst and the financial crisis of 2008.
Right.
But since 2009, we've been on this kind of historic bull run. We don't know if it's over right now, but certainly through the end of 2021, historic levels of stock market gain. Now, a question I ask people is, what do you think the gain in the market was during that 22-year period from 2000 to 2021, understanding that the market closed at an all-time high at the end of that period? And a lot of people guess, well, 10%, 8%, 9%. It's actually 7.04%. That's what the stock market's done for 22 years. Now, interestingly enough, if you have a typical index product, it credited about 660 during that same period, 6.6%. Not quite as high as the stock market, but you had none of the dips, you had none of the risk. So what I like about indexing, it lets somebody kind of relax and enjoy retirement without worrying about the ups and downs of the stock market, because it's that nice, steady growth. When things are good, you're getting the benefit of the good, but when things are bad, you don't have to pay for that.
So as you mentioned before, not a piece for all of your portfolio, but as we tell a lot of our clients, as boring as it sounds to maybe not make the full upside of the market, expectation setting is so important. The fact that you cannot lose also means that it's okay to potentially give up some of the upside of the portfolio. So that being said, I know you said another trait when it comes to index universal life that may be advantageous in the strategy is healthcare and how it could potentially help somebody with, let's say, major medical or long-term care needs.
Well, when you kind of poll people near retirement or in retirement, they'll say, what are your biggest concerns? One is certainly I outlive my income, so you're always concerned about that. But another one that's always in the top three is long-term care. People are scared to death. They've seen what's happened to their parents. They know how that can drain an estate very quickly if you need long-term care. Now, one of the unique features of Index Universal Life is that it provides additional amounts if you need it for long-term care. These are called technically accelerated death benefit riders, but effectively what they say is if you can qualify for long-term care, and it's generally a definition, it's kind of a federal definition, inability to perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, things like getting in and out of bed, dressing, eating. If you can't do 2 of 6 of those, most Index Universal Life policies will allow you to accelerate a portion of the death benefit that immediately, without having to die, that you can get tax-free to use for long-term care. So while you may have been going along using your cash value to generate income during retirement, if you qualify for long-term care, you get access to this larger death benefit right away without having to die. So it's an incredible benefit. And again, it's something that is packaged in Index Universal Life that is not packaged in a Roth or an IRA. You just don't get those kinds of features that you do in Index Universal Life.
So a little bit of help with market risk, a little bit of help with tax risk, a little bit of help with healthcare risk. So as you mentioned, really a planning tool and a planning strategy that can be very, very beneficial, not just for our clients, but our viewers here in the local St. Louis area.
And that's the key, and I emphasize that in my books. You're talking about diversification. This is the way you manage risk. You diversify. And if you don't have, at least from my viewpoint, if you don't have some Index Universal Life as part of that overall strategy, you may be missing out on some real diversification opportunities.
That's a fantastic point. Stick with us. Coming up on this planning tip of the week, we're going to talk about sequence of returns and how that could be a potential risk for your retirement. Stay with us.
Life, a series of moments. A touch, a look, a laugh. Successful people, It might not be superior imagination. It just might be superior retirement planning. Imagine what's next. Plan today, own tomorrow.
Have you saved enough to retire? It's one of the most common questions we're asked at Wheelhouse Advisory Group, and you deserve to know. The answer might mean that you can retire earlier than you ever imagined. You've worked and saved for years, now it's time to make your savings work for you. Our team can help you discover how to generate income you can't outlive, plus ways to fight taxes, inflation, and the rising cost of healthcare. Don't delay. Get your retirement income questions answered so you can enjoy the retirement you deserve. Schedule your complimentary 30-minute strategy call now.
Where would you go if you could go anywhere? What would you do if you could do anything? How would you fill your days? Who would you spend them with? When you retire, what will you explore? Let us show you how a complete retirement plan can open your world to endless possibilities. Explore your retirement.
We have a saying here at Wheelhouse that retirement is 49% financial, 50% mental, and 1% luck. Luck can also be interchangeable with hope, and it is our job as total retirement planners to make sure that hope is not part of your plan. One way to achieve this is to make sure a portfolio's returns are a bit more predictable than just following the stock market. While the stock market is often seen as a way to grow money long term, many retirees aren't keen on riding the market's ups and downs with all of their retirement funds like they may have when they were 10 or 20 years from retirement. Let's look at an example of two hypothetical retirements. Two brothers, George and James, who kept their assets riding with the market throughout their retirement years. Each retired with $1 million, and each decided to withdraw $60,000 annually from their accounts. But even though George and James retired just 3 years apart, their portfolio's balances look very, very different over time. Unfortunately for George, he retired in 2000, just as the market was experiencing a significant downturn. And right out of the gate, he had some major losses. In 2000, 2001, and 2002, though he averaged a 4.96% rate of return throughout the years of his retirement, he never recovered from those early losses. George ran out of money in year 15 of retirement. James retired in 2003. He got off to a much better start. James had averaged that same 4.96% average rate of return as George, but because his losses came later in retirement, his portfolio held up quite well. In his 18th year of retirement, James still had $940,749. What is displayed in this example is often overlooked risk in retirement called sequence of returns. Unfortunately, it is impossible to predict what the stock market will do tomorrow, much less for the duration of your retirement. So trying to time the retirement date to avoid an early loss isn't a viable strategy. Keeping the majority of your funds at risk is a good way to have hope be a major part of your retirement plan, which is not something we consider as a true strategy for holistic planning. There are things you can do, however, to try to avoid or reduce potential damage from sequence of return risk. There are a number of investments that can help protect income and shift the portfolio towards a lower risk profile as one gets closer to retirement. As Warren Buffett once said, the single greatest way to compound capital is to avoid large losses. This could mean shifting a portion of your retirement portfolio to a dividend-producing stock, good quality bonds, annuities, or even real estate properties. It is important that whichever investment mix is chosen to de-risk is one that you understand. A well-constructed plan to de-risk and create income in retirement does not only have to be a multitude of products, but it has a strategy around these tools that is understandable to the people that should be benefiting from the plan. Taking measures to build this plan and to fill it in with investments will make it work in a huge step towards making sure luck or hope is an extremely small percentage of your retirement. Finally, it's important to remember that planning for the distribution stage of life, or deaccumulation, is extremely different than investing strictly for accumulation, which many of us do for most of our working years. Finding an advisor who specializes in true total retirement planning and offers multiple strategies and investment options could be the difference between facing surprises along your retirement journey and having a secure, worry-free, and predictable retirement. Stick with us, the Wheelhouse Retirement Show continues. Retiring in the 21st century requires more than just claiming Social Security. It takes strategic, comprehensive planning that's tailored to your goals and dreams. At Wheelhouse Advisor Group, we make the process convenient for you with income, investment, tax, healthcare, legacy planning all under one roof. Retirement planning should be thorough and comprehensive, but it shouldn't be overwhelming. Let the Wheelhouse Advisory team design a retirement plan you feel confident about. Get started by scheduling your complimentary 30-minute strategic planning call today.
You have a club for every scenario. A driver for the long holes. Wedges to get you over the hazards. And a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back nine? Call to set your phone visit today and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
It's been great to have Marty Ruby on as today's special guest. Marty, more and more people are asking about tools like Index Universal Life, or IUL. When should somebody consider this as part of their portfolio strategy?
Well, again, the sooner you do, the better off, because anything going from tax deferred to tax free, the sooner you take action, the better. Now, generally, if your money is currently in a 401k or an IRA and you're less or younger than 59 and a half, there is a penalty to get out to move that money. But certainly if you're 59 and a half or older, this is definitely the time to think about it. The longer you wait, the more tax you'll end up owing under your IRA.
You know, one of the common themes with so many of our clients is, while they still want to continue to accumulate money, so many of them have realized they've gotten to the point where they have enough money to retire and retire successfully, as long as they don't lose what they have. It's a common thing among most Wheelhouse clients. And going back to my planning tip of the week, which is sequence of returns, how could IUL also help with sequence of return risk?
Well, it actually does it in a very big way. And again, IUL, as we're talking about life insurance, is an income producer for the client. That's what we're talking about, is tax-free income while you're alive. Now here's the thing, sequence of return risk is greatest when you have this volatile market and you have the unfortunate luck to retire when the market starts going down.
Right.
And that's the worst part of sequence return risk. Even though average-wise it might be the same as an up then a down market, a down then an up market, that sequence makes a big difference. But here's the thing, in Index Universal Life, you have a zero floor. You can't go down. You don't have those negative years. So you don't have the same kind of sequence of return risk that we would on like a managed portfolio. Basically, your money is accumulating at what I think of as book value. And I put that kind of in quotes, but that's because the accounts can't go down. You cannot have a negative year in terms of investment results. It can be zero or positive. And so that just eliminates most of that sequence return risk because you don't have those negative years.
That's very interesting. So what would you say would be the main factors somebody should consider if they are thinking about it, let's say an IRA to IUL or Index Universal Life strategy?
Well, first of all, these are underwritten. This is life insurance. So you don't have to be in perfect health, but you have to be insurable.
Okay.
And a lot of times in cases I've seen, sometimes the IRA account holder, let's say it's the husband, is in poor health, but the wife, the spouse, is in good health. Well, once the money's out of the IRA, it doesn't have to go insurance on whoever's IRA it's coming out of. It's now after-tax dollars.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, a kind of the healthier of a couple maybe we've used as the insured. So underwriting is a consideration. I always tell people, don't underwrite yourself. Don't in your own mind, let the company do it.
Yeah.
You know, let's review the facts, let's see what the situation is, and then we'll see how appropriate, how good the numbers look in a particular situation.
So we've given our viewers a lot of information today. So after today's show, what do you think our viewers, their biggest takeaway should be, and what should be their next step to receive what I call a complete retirement approach?
First of all, I hope the big takeaway is taxes can make a huge difference in the overall what you receive as retirement income from your savings. That's point one. Point two, I strongly recommend, quite frankly, that they call your office and sit down with you, make an appointment, and go over what their options are. Because really, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. It's really saying, let's look at the client's particular situation, their tax rate, their income, their legacy needs, health, all these different factors have to go into devising a strategy. It's what we call a complete strategy. Because for a lot of people out there, my guess is their strategy is incomplete. There's parts, there's gaps in it. For example, they haven't taken into account taxes. Maybe they haven't taken into account outliving their income and so forth. So I think the best thing is to sit down with you and your associates and figure out what's a comprehensive plan, taking into account all the individual circumstances of that particular individual.
That's fantastic information. And as I mentioned before, if anyone would like a copy of Marty's book, feel free to contact us, as we'd be more than happy to get you a copy of it. Don't hesitate to act on the information you've heard today. It never hurts to call, even if it's just for a second opinion. Don't wait. Call now. For Marty Ruby, my team at the Wheelhouse Advisory Group, I'm Rishi Ghosh. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.